deep dive mythology,
lore,
Dungeons and Dragons.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Thinker Podcast. It's all about the Homebrew Workshop today here on the Creative Thinker Podcast. My name is Henry Moon and I'm joined by
Michael Vasquez. We didn't introduce ourselves in the last episode.
We haven't introduced ourselves in a month. We've just been diving in. So you remember who it is.
Yeah,
Fuck out of here.
We're here.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going to be homebrewing some stuff today. So we're titling the episode Homebrew Workshop. Some things that we've seen either in literature or in video games that we are just going to homebrew it specifically for D&D 5e. So I guess we should specify that. And it is specified in the title, but we're going to in the future do that.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, specifically either for D&D 5e, you can try and figure out how to homebrew it, or at least see how we are taking these inspirational moments and homebrewing them for our own game, potentially. So
yeah, this is a starter step on your story stew. Nice. That was an alliteration for you English nerds out there. So Homebrew Workshop 5e, we're talking about God of War first. What would you do to homebrew some God of War?
Yeah.
I know you have done several of these things for our game, and they turned out really good. So I think it's really cool what you've done, and that's why we're doing God of War. So kick it off.
Yeah. So we're going to look at Kratos' Rage Burst, right? So if you played the more recent God of War games, those are the ones that I've played, the 2018 game and Ragnarok. So they have a Rage Burst mechanic, and you're able to do a couple things in this Ragnarok. There are 3, there's technically 4, but I haven't played the DLC, so I'm not going to talk about it because I can't take inspiration from something I haven't done necessarily. So we have 3 different rage abilities. We have Fury, we have Valor, and we have Wrath. So Fury is when Kratos puts away his weapons. This happens at the very beginning of the first God of War game. And then he goes fisticuffs against the stranger. He has an increased damage to his melee. He takes less damage and regenerates a small amount of health after using this.
Some thumping stumps.
Yeah. So honestly, the biggest thing I'm like, okay, how would I homebrew this specific aspect? I mean, it's pretty much the barbarian rage already as it is. If you wanted to, extend it or maybe talk about getting some health back and maybe whatever that rage proficiency bonus is, every time you hit, you can get a little bit of health back. But I think that is the base kind of rage ability.
But like with the barbarian, you don't put away your weapons. I think that's like a key thing here.
Yeah.
It's like you have to go hand to hand, which means that your unarmed strike, your unarmed strike has to be more powerful than what it normally is, because most people's unarmed are like a D4 or D6.
Well,
like
technically the unarmed strike, because you got something at the beginning, so you have brass knuckles that give you the D4.
Yeah.
But typically it is just the strength modifier that is the unarmed strike. So it would be 1 plus your strength modifier. So it's usually, you don't even roll anything for it. But maybe with this, if you put your weapons away, it is like a D4, maybe depending on like your proficiency bonus. Like if you have a +2 proficiency bonus, it increases the damage outcome for doing these melee strikes.
Ooh, like you, every time you go into this, or every turn you start, when you have Fury enacted, you re-roll what the modifier is, what the plus is, like just a D20 roll.
Yeah.
What's your plus?
Yeah.
For damage.
Yeah. I would maybe do it a little bit less than a D20, but yeah, like proficiency.
It's the first one I could think of.
If your proficiency is like a +1, maybe you start off with a D4. If your proficiency is +2, start off with a D6, and so on and so forth. Like your proficiency or barbarian dice almost moves up, or your rage dice moves up
like that.
As your proficiency moves up, as far as like D&D goes.
And then like I always feel like for the health that you get from it, it's got to be like, I like the mechanic when we've used it where like the health that you get back from each of your attacks is some derivative of the amount of damage you did. So like a third or whatever that is.
Yeah.
You divide it by 3 and round up,
Yeah, absolutely. You could do that. I think the simplest would be like what that barbarian rage bonus is that we always forget to, every barbarian
Oh,
forgets
yeah.
to add at the end of it, right? Maybe that's what you get back. So it's kind of like this steady, every hit you get, you're able to get some health back, but it might not, your damage might not be equal to like the amount of health. Because I want to try and, I would like to homebrew and reduce the amount of math that I have to do, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Would this be something where it increases the amount of attacks you have because you're just sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah,
If you're going to a lower, let's say it still
Yeah.
does less damage per strike than your weapon does because you don't want it to be OP. But because of that, you can do 4. You have the option to do 4
yeah,
something
like
like that instead
four
of
attacks
2.
in this rage. Yeah, something like that.
for like 2 turns. Like maybe there's a limit to the modifier.
Maybe
of the rage.
maybe again we're going back to proficiency. What if it's you get an extra attack per your proficiency? So at level 1, you can go into this rage and it's still not hella OP yet, but you can potentially use it to get into a higher rage, and where it can like a level, I wouldn't say 20, right? You can start adding D20 to your attack rolls. You can do an extra 6 attacks because your proficiency is up to +6, and then you get your normal strikes. And as a barbarian, at that point, you have at least 3 strikes. And you wanted to dip it, I think you would have to do 2 in barbarian and dip the rest in fighter to get 4 attacks. But you could potentially do that, maybe.
Nice. I like that. I feel like we did a good job with that one.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just one of 3.
Yeah.
Let's vibe some.
So the next one is Valor. So it consumes a chunk of rage to regenerate health. So I think this is interesting, right? So I wrote down you can almost use it like a bonus action to use your rage to heal, proficiency times rage bonus to heal and continue on in the fight. I think you would go into your rage, you would still be able to take those that half damage, but you could use your rages to gain health, and that would be your proficiency times your rage bonus.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so it's instead of that extra attack, maybe instead of that, you get to do 1 heal and lose, because there's a tracker that you get as a barbarian where it's like, yeah, you have this 1 more chance to go into a rage today before you have a long rest, and it takes one of those.
Yeah, nice. Absolutely. It takes one of the rages away. Because
a lot of times I feel like in D&D, I mean, unless you're doing like a cave crawl or whatever. Dungeon crawl. Yeah, sorry. A dungeon crawl, then you're really only going to go into a rage once or twice a day, and you get higher levels. You have like 6 or 7 of them, and what do you do with them?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the utility?
I think that is where this kind of came from, because the focus now on D&D is very much storytelling, and a lot of barbarians at a certain point, you can maintain your rage up to X amount of time, or you don't need to focus on maintaining your rage. I think the condition to maintain your rage is either make an attack, or have an attack hit you, or someone makes an attack on you, or you take damage. So those are the conditions that you need to maintain your rage. But as you start leveling up in Barbarian, you don't necessarily need those. So like you said, how do you use those other rages? I think that's where this whole idea comes from.
So all of these extra rages would take one of those little dots on
the... Yeah.
Nice. So it would last maybe 1 turn.
So Fury would be like, that would be more of your normal rage. And so you're like, I'm going to go into my Fury rage.
Oh, instead of Frenzy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it'd be like an adaptation on Frenzy.
So this would be if I were to adapt the class, right? So then at a certain level, I get into Valor. Well, they'll have more. So you're not going to start off with all 3 of these rages at the beginning, because that's how God of War, like in the game, does it. You gradually get these rages over time, and then you choose, okay, which one am I going to use right now? So you could use the Fury, but when you use your Fury rage, you can't like swap out and go into Valor rage. You have to decide before the fight, or you have to decide as you rage what you're going to go into until you lose that rage.
I like that. Yeah, because then you can just use that one thing, and then it's like, well, this is your turn. Are you going to use more power to the things that require it, like healing, or are you going to stay with Fury and just keep punching 3 or 4 times a turn or whatever? Yeah.
So, and then I like it being proficiency times your rage bonus, right? Because hopefully, in my mind, we make a subclass and you're not getting this till level 8 or 9. So your proficiency is going to be anywhere between 2 or 3. and then your rage bonus is also somewhere around 2 or 3. So you could potentially have 4 rage slots, and then 2 times 3, so you get 6 hit points back. But if you want to use all of them, maybe you can use all of them in this like giant burst of rage, make it like a kind of a story reason. So then you have 4 times, so you just gain 24 hit points or something like that.
Nice.
And then you still have your hit dice, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, to potentially heal up even more, and keeps you in the fight, and you still gain the benefit of half damage the entire time you're raging still.
Nice. I hope you're enjoying, if you hear the sound of my voice right now, you're enjoying the peek behind the DM's kilt right now.
As we
go into
that's an odd
all of this math and rules.
yeah. No, this is going to be a little bit of a crunchy one for sure.
Yeah.
So that's our second one. And again, I would probably potentially workshop it to maybe do, I don't know, maybe do a little bit more heal. But at least for now, that's the idea, right? Until we get someone who's like, let's put this down to paper. Like, I really want this
plus proficiency. Just
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Wrath.
Then we're moving into the last rage ability. We're going Wrath. So it consumes a large chunk of rage to charge down an enemy with a weapon and deal a large amount of damage. So it's
charge down an enemy. What does that mean?
So that would be like,
sprint over, like,
so like
it's running away from you and you need to catch it.
Yeah, and so it's like one of those, you go into this rage, you go into Wrath, and within, let's throw just an arbitrary number, 40 to 60 feet, you almost like pounce straight to them. You don't need to use any type of movement. You're almost gliding straight to this one, almost like a battle angel. I feel like just go straight to this person.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Yeah, go straight to them.
And then and then you can deal extra damage. So I put down super rage. Maybe uses 2+ rages to deal double damage or add an extra damage die to the mix. What do you think?
That one should cost more. Yeah, I like that.
So maybe like Wrath has a minimum of like 3 rages that it has to use.
And I almost feel like because this is a movement heavy version, it's almost like your movement is halved for like the next 3 rounds or something like that. Yeah. Because it's like you're soaking up this potential energy to use right now, and it's, if you want to make it gritty, it's at the cost of something. So I like the idea that it takes two rages, but I also want there to be a movement component where it's like, you're locked in with this person. You made them your focus. And so if they're not your focus the next turn, like if you just knock them out real easy, then it's like, well, I kind of screwed myself. Like I'm way away from everybody else.
Yeah. What if it's like, after you use this, you lose your rage, right? You have one turn.
Once they're dead, you drop out.
Yeah. Once your focus is dead, then you drop the rage. And what do you think about how the damage works? Double damage or an extra damage die? What are you feeling? Because I feel like this would be a higher level rage ability. Because I believe that's how they have it in the game too. Is you get Valor first, and then lastly you're gonna get Wrath as you start going to the end game.
I like the idea where it's like, because strength is the additive, right? Usually, and so. I would say double that number, your plus number. So whatever you roll is still the same, and then you double the plus.
Oh, okay.
Because then it's like, because that's based on strength, is like, in my mind, you just zip across the field, and it's like there's so much kinetic energy with you, like you're gonna be way stronger when you make contact.
Oh, cool. I like
so
that.
it's like, in 6 seconds you did what you should have done in 18. So you have like that double for 2 or 3 hits.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. But I don't know if that makes sense to continue, right? Like, so if it stays up and you stay fighting this thing, is it just a 1-turn ability, or is this something that continues?
Well, I think based on like what we're saying, like it's to charge down an enemy. So if you were to like lose the rage, then you would have to redo another 2 rages to maybe move and activate it again.
Back over. Gotcha.
Yeah. So you could still have like that movement of it, but it's like, oh man, at the cost of potentially. So on 1 turn, you have to go there, use your 2 rages or whatever to get there, and then maybe you burn a rage as long as you maintain it with being in front of the person that you're in, and then to do the movement again, you have to burn 2 rages. So it's really like this is a higher level move to do and to maintain. And the drawback is you're losing your rages, and you could potentially be far away from the party if you like dash and then you go and do it again. So you've burned 4 rages, and you're potentially still trying to keep one. And I don't know what the max rages are for a barbarian. So
I don't know. I think I have like 6 right now.
Okay, so and you're level like 14. So I'm assuming
maybe 8.
Yeah. So then I feel like 2 per would be appropriate for it.
Yeah, and I think if you double the plus instead of the final damage,
yeah,
your average is higher.
Okay, yeah,
because you could roll dog shit and then you know.
Yeah, I absolutely like that.
Yeah.
I really like it. It vibes with like almost the explosive crit where you're going to get the most amount of damage. I like that. Double your strength modifier, and adding that to the damage, because you said now you know for sure if you're proficient with your weapon, you're going to be adding at least anywhere between like 7 to 8.
Because the weapon I have has a plus 20, so if I could do. You know what I mean? If I hit, then I could do, plus 40 at the end of it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have to worry what I rolled, or I can add what I rolled.
Yeah,
and that's,
exactly.
So then, because so much of it is like taking
per hit too.
Yeah. So much of it is taking something away from the player.
Yeah.
That you want to have it to be like, there's still a reason to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I like it.
I feel like that's pretty balanced.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to that and write that up.
Yeah.
I really like this
Nice.
kind of. I like this super barbarian subclass, because sometimes I feel like the berserker and the barbarian class, like it doesn't have as much utility, right? Like it feels very fun to play, like you have to flavor a lot of it, but the utility of what you can do is kind of limited, which is why when I was playing God of War, like, dude, this would be so cool as a barbarian to be running rage this way.
Yeah, I feel like in our campaign, Molly and Gracie have cleric and a wizard. Warlock, sorry. Anyway, a warlock. I always get that wrong. And both of them have very sort of backstory driven characters.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of their interactions are based on that. A lot of like what their plans are going forward are based on that. And a lot of their combat moments are also based on that.
Yeah, for sure.
And it seems easy-ish for them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they do a really good job with it. But for me, I've had to change sort of what my character does outside of combat like 3 or 4 times. It's like politician, leader, business owner, drunk.
Yeah.
Just like I've added in all these things over the years where they haven't necessarily had to do that because their characters are interesting already.
yeah, exactly. And I feel like it gives their subclass gives them the variety to have those different experiences already.
Yeah, which is cool. I mean, I like that a lot.
Absolutely.
But
so that's the end of our God of War section. I mean, there's obviously so many things that you can add from God of War, but I mean, that's just how we did it, based off of one ability for one character. There are a couple other characters in the games that have their tree of stuff, and even God of War, they have like the trees on how to increase people's abilities and things like that. And I really would love to incorporate something like that in D&D, where you're like, not just my weapon hits, but like, he's got like an ability where he dodges back and he throws his axe and it does like this kind of ice move, and then it comes back to him. Like, how could I incorporate some of those moves into a barbarian subclass where you can start learning like maneuvers and things like that?
I was thinking about the axe return thing, and I was thinking, what if it was something almost in line with legendary or lair actions, where you have 1.5 turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like basically you have 2 turns in the same combat, where it's like you throw the axe, and then when it comes back is at the end of initiative.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And because then all of your enemies have moved, and sort of like in the game where it's like when he calls it back, sometimes it kills something else.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for
like
sure.
That's super cool. And if you were like pretty high-ish in initiative, and then that's the very last thing as it's coming back, Of course, if you roll terrible, then it kind of sucks. But
yeah,
it at least is not as effective. But then you can leave it up to chance. But yeah, so
I mean, it could even be like something you start gaining over time. And see, this is how easy it is to homebrew it, right?
Yeah.
It starts gaining.
This is how easy it is to lose 10 minutes on something we didn't plan.
Yeah. How you could gain like an additional property of the axe is where like if you miss, like it still comes back. And it can still potentially hit something in the way, or maybe there's like a random roll where it's like, okay, you missed, but you have to roll a d4 and it's going to go one of those directions and still could potentially on the backdraft hit somebody, or you can hit and then maneuver yourself somewhere and then it'll still come back to you and potentially hit someone, you know?
Or if there's like an arc ability built in when you get later, arc or straight line, and you can either throw it straight line and back, or you can throw it in an arc.
Yeah.
And it has to be a circle from you.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes the way fights are laid out, that can be really useful too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, could you imagine? Because sometimes I don't play like the natural one, the nat one in combat, like it's going to immediately hit someone. I will usually let them know, like, okay, your allies are here. You're trying to shoot a blast. If you do roll a nat one, you could potentially hit someone. I try and make
like
that
surprise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it would be one of those where like, okay, I have someone right here, but I'm going to arc it this way. I think there's a lot of cool ways that you could definitely do that axe.
Yeah. So cool.
That's our God of War portion. first 20 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. And that's, again, we just used, well, now a mechanic and a half, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot more to the axe that in the game that we could homebrew and then bring in. But, and then once you're done with it, it's like writing the rough draft of a paper, right? And suddenly you have to make sure it's all cohesive, and then you have to make sure it makes sense together, and then you got to make sure it flows together.
So
right?
Honestly, part of the axe that I gave you has inspiration from the Leviathan axe, because I had the one of the dragon creatures like imbue magic into an axe you already had, into a gem that you already had with this axe, so that it felt like it's been upgraded but still holds kind of the same value to it. And I know we've talked a bit about how I would love to continue to have like these weapons that are family heirlooms that go through the family and have some type of meaning or property to it. And so that was kind of the vibe and inspiration for the axe.
And what I really thought was cool about that too, was that there was a like secret rules built into it too, where it's like, this is new to you, and as you use it, you may come across stuff. And then it was like, well, I'm going to use because there's two blades. One's a blade, one's a horn from a dragon that we killed, and it's like a really rare one. And so when I use the horn on certain creatures, it does way more damage. And then when you use the blade, it's like you're ensuring your chances of hitting. You know, there's all these like, there's so much lore in the weapon. It's so cool.
Yeah, I didn't tell him because like a dragon polymorphed into a human who was freed from a sword. We've mentioned him before in the podcast. He created the sword and then added the dragon horn to the back of it, and it's essentially like a dragon slaying axe as well. If you hit with the horn. But I didn't tell Henry that until narratively he decided to do that when he was fighting a dragon. I was like, okay, roll your damage, and you're going to roll an additional 3d6 because it's a dragon slaying weapon as well. But you just didn't use it, and I held that from you until it happened.
And it's because we were fighting a dragon, and I'm a dwarf and in the game, and I was on a high precipice, a cliff or whatever, sort of above the dragon. Mm-hmm. And so narratively, I was like, if I jump, I'm going to swing at its eye. And if I hit, I need to hang there for a second so that I maybe have a chance, of hitting something else on the way down, right? Because it was a really large dragon. So so I just naturally, because it's like, I want to hang there for a second so the next turn, maybe I can hit something else before I get down by its feet and get trampled.
Yeah.
Not that happens a lot. But anyway, so I hit with and I don't think I killed it that round, but that's how I found out. I was like, whoa, I did how much damage? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also a lesson in, one player creativity and doing something that was described, because a lot of times DMs will describe things that their weapons are like, and a lot of times it kind of gets lost in translation. And so that's a description that you held on to, and I'm glad you did, because if you didn't, I would be like, well, it has this hidden ability, but he's just never going to use it. And he was trying to be creative with it, right? He's going to jump from here and he's going to use the other side of the axe, knowing that it's probably not going to do as much damage, but I at least want to try. And so then I was like, okay, yeah, go for it. Try it. Yeah, let's see what happens.
I think that's the benefit of AI generated art, not to be controversial, but but because DMs can just type in a prompt until they, I mean, you have to be somewhat good with keywords, but you can just type in a prompt to say, this is what this looks like. This is what I'm creating for them. And then you can just print out that picture and give it to your player or email it to them. I mean, we're in the 21st century, but I'm very much pen and paper. Here's a question I had. How do you feel about wearing armor at higher levels?
Moving on to our second topic. So this was something that it's been interesting and just on my mind, right? So I was reading Murtag, and there is a scene.
Oh, don't spoil it. I have it, but I haven't read it.
There is a scene where he goes into a situation and he has his armor on, and then the situation. Minor spoiler, is not as bad as he thinks it's going to be. And there is a point where he is asked to dance, and he knows how to dance, but he's like, I'm not going to get out of my armor to do it, so it's not going to look good. And it just had me thinking, like, oh yeah, like you can't maneuver as well if you're in armor, right? And adventurers aren't in armor all the time. And I know there's like the Dawn and Doth rule for like putting on armor. It's supposed to take time. If you like stay in your armor for too long, like you're supposed to take like it's supposed to be a process, right? But how many people do that, right? You watch so many live plays, they don't talk about keeping their armor on, keeping their armor off. But I think it's interesting to, if you wanted to at higher levels, be like, hey, like there are going to be some situations where you don't keep your armor on, and how does that change your HP and your AC is where the idea kind of comes to, because there are times when, let's say we have a castle here, you're infiltrating a castle, right? And there are, servants or whatever that are around, and unintended consequences, and maybe you have to like fight them, like what is their HP and AC? Like I want to make this feel either epic or make it feel a certain way. So I was thinking, if you are not prepped for battle and you do not have and you don't have your armor on and you're caught by surprise, that your HP and AC are reduced significantly, just to make it a little bit more narratively make sense, because nothing is worse than going up and sneaking up on somebody. And this has happened in Critical Role. Don't get me wrong, it was a very funny thing that happened, and it's a great table of role players, so they were able to make it really work as a story. But there was a guy who was asleep on guard, and they shot him. The rogue shot him and did full sneak attack damage, and the guy goes and is still up. It's like, the dude's asleep though. Like, how is he, like, it doesn't make sense story wise. Like I would want to create a situation where the team is going in, and you could create minions, right? But what if the threat is when they awake and are alerted, now everyone's kind of like armor has moved up. Like in a video game, like the exclamation point isn't above their head yet.
Oh my gosh.
If the exclamation point isn't above their head or alerted, they are way more likely to be
just dead.
You can slit their throat, you can snap their neck, however you want to describe like what your player is doing, and you drop the AC because it's a surprise. You could give them advantage on it, but at least drop the HP, and so that it still feels good as a player, to get this kind of surprise thing on. And then also you can increase the tension in your own players and your own party. If there's a situation where everyone's at the Electric Dragon, the bar in our home game, and is everyone armored up in there? Like if something happens, what does their HP and AC look like at the very beginning? And I don't want to do it to like kill a player right away, but I do want to do it to like incite, like, oh, your AC is dropped here right now. You don't have your armor on you, or you weren't battle ready, and so your HP and AC are lower. I don't know how that HP would work, but your AC is lower because of it. Yeah. I think the DM often asks, "What's your AC? Does this hit?" It's like, well, were they asleep? Were they just chilling at the bar? Like, what's kind of the vibe that's going on here?
Yeah. No, I think that's a cool rule, and it's a very gritty. It's like almost like
for sure.
You have 5e, and then you have to have your own pages of rules for your table, which is like, I mean, if you've been playing with a group for a long time, it's easy to add rules. And I think that's fun. But
that's what that's the beauty of what people call 5e, because it has a very good foundation,
Mhm.
and then you can change it to how you want it to be.
Yeah, I've been going down the rabbit hole of light armor videos,
Mhm.
like versus like metal versus leather versus like really tight fiber fabric that has padding in it.
Yeah.
And of course, YouTubers trying to get views always say that the tight fiber fabric is actually more useful than any of the other armors. But normally, what they're talking about is like stopping slashing damage
Yeah.
and like arrows, but also not getting dented in like the metal would. Like if you just hammered somebody in the chest in medieval armor and then that metal pops in, ooh, they're dead anyway.
Yeah, they're gonna
They're
be
dead
constantly
anyway.
hitting it.
Snail style, dude.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's their argument for why it's better. And I was just thinking, like, if they're not in their full armor, then say that, maybe they have some sort of fabric armor that is like, yeah, they can be surprised, but your justification for like, because yeah, they can sneak up and kill somebody, but you don't want somebody to sneak up and kill them because
Yeah,
like
for sure.
that's not player centered, right? So
Right.
in to throw that off, say, well, maybe they have that kind of shirt and pants on,
Yeah.
and so they can get surprised, they can get hurt badly, but they're not going to be like cut or pierced.
Yeah. I think like for a player, it would maybe just reduce the AC, and not necessarily their HP, because then it's like, oh, they're alert in battle, right? Okay, now their HP
Nice.
just moved up, right? Like that's gonna be a lot harder to justify.
Nice. I like that. I'm more on board now.
Yeah. I mean, that was just an idea that I like, especially for NPCs in particular, because then it's like, oh, you could just say they're minions and give them 1 HP, but it's just something I was thinking about, because then what if they're minions until the alarm goes off and then they're not minions anymore?
Ooh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Let's move on to inspiration and sanity, and then
Okay,
maybe we start off with the next video game we're going to do, Assassin's Creed, and then jump into the other special rules. Yeah,
Sounds good.
So what's been inspiring me has been the Pirate History podcast by Matt Albers. I've been listening to a lot more podcasts lately, both because I want to improve this one and because
sure.
there's a lot more sort of niche things that I've been researching and enjoying. So there's a podcast out there for everything. So I found this one. He's been going for a really long time, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about piracy.
That's cool.
Both the Golden Age and, I mean, everything associated, all kinds of history and at that time period in the world, all kinds of characters. I mean, and the way he does it, I mean, he does his research and then he'll read, historical documents, and then he has his summation of what he read. And sometimes he'll do dramatic readings where it's like, okay, I wrote this kind of as a scene and I'm going to read through it because it's a more pivotal moment and stuff like that. So it's just very interesting the way he presents the information. 30-40 minute episodes. Very, very cool stuff. Really enjoy that podcast. And it's probably the only one that I really have over 100 episodes listened
Oh,
on.
Dang. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean,
I think he's got like 500. I don't even know. He's so many.
that's crazy.
Maybe 300. I don't know.
I think that's I mean, the beauty of technology right now is if you use it correctly, there is just so much to learn. Yeah, we can get distracted with social media, but if you can really focus in on the things that are important, man, there's so much to learn. Like the podcast I shared, for my inspiration a couple episodes ago, like that has been inspiring me for my own game and my home game. And then there are other podcasts I'm just listening to just for inspiration and education. I think it's very, there's still so much to learn.
Yeah, learning how to research is like a survival skill at this point in humanity. It's like this will help you improve yourself faster than anything else.
Yeah.
What's been inspiring you this week, Michael?
So I've been watching an anime that was recommended to me a couple months ago, and I was like, I don't know. And then finally I was like, you know what? This is the first recommendation that this person gave to me. So I was like, I got to give it a shot, right?
You got to.
So I'm watching Tokyo Revengers. And
what is that?
It is an anime about a guy who his middle school girlfriend dies in a car wreck. And
it's not where I thought that was going.
Yeah, no, right? So
Brutal.
He's like 26 or something like that, and he's watching the news and sees that his girlfriend dies. This is all episode 1. He is like devastated by it because he hasn't reached out to her in such a long time. And then he's on this train station getting ready to go to work, or he just came from work, and he gets pushed into the actual tracks. And as like the train is coming at him, he thinks he gets hit, and then he wakes up 12 years in the past in middle school. And
What?
yeah,
That's cool.
and through the first episode, you see that he is able to go back and forth in time through a connection. But that we can get a little bit more into whenever we do our time travel episode.
Heck yeah.
But
it's coming up too. I'm so excited.
What I've enjoying about it is because he ends up joining a gang, like a little biker gang, and they actually have like a really, you know how I am with my factions. I really like the structure about it, and they have a structure with it. So they have like their boss, or what do they call him? What do they call him? I have it here right now. Biker gang. They have the president of the gang, the boss of the gang, and then they have their vice president of the gang. Then they have their lieutenants. Then they have their captains of the division, and then they have their vice captain. And it's only a group of about 100 people in this gang, and there are a bunch of other gangs here. It takes place in Tokyo per the name, and so you're seeing like how these gangs are working, the inner workings. There's middle school life that's going on, but there's still a biker gang. It's kind of this weird, kind of suspension of disbelief that needs to happen, but it's also a very just fun show. I typically like more action oriented shows, or that's building up to an action, and this also does a very good job of character development, story growth, and a little bit of action. And they bring some characters in that are very, very fun to watch. And then as you see how time travel works in this show, it is quite fun, quite interesting. And again, the thing that I really love about it is just the layout of the gangs and how they have it. It's so cool. So
nice.
Cool. I enjoy it very, very much.
That sounds awesome. What's that on?
It's so dumb. First season's on Crunchyroll. Nice. Second season's on Hulu, but I guess if you have Disney Plus, they have like a Hulu beta in right now. So I've been watching the second season on Hulu Plus, and I don't know where to get the third season.
Nice.
So if someone knows, please let me know. I just finished the second season,
message,
and it's so good. I can't wait to watch the third season. If it's out, I might be wrong. It's not out yet, but
we're
who
just
knows?
Stuck out here jonesing for Tokyo Revengers. Come on, people.
Yeah.
Help us out.
So that's what's been inspiring me. Heading back to
Assassin's Creed shit.
Here we go. Here we go.
That's my title inside the document. Assassin's Creed shit. So Assassin's Creed, for those who have not played, is a historical fiction, and it's relived by somebody who is a direct descendant of an assassin. Basically gets kidnapped and put into an animus and brought into this age-old war between the Templars and the assassins. Right. So
cool.
The Templars are searching throughout time for historical artifacts that will lead to their power, which them gaining that power is basically they're anti-free will, and the assassins are pro-free will, which seems a little bit ironic, but that's how the story is set up. It's very cool. It's very past and present.
Yeah.
And there's two mysteries going on. It's more of a detective story. At least the earlier games were more detective stories than fighting stories.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to jump into adapting that because a huge part of those games is the flow of information.
Mm-hmm.
And I find when I DM games, the flow of information is like the major thing I focus on.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to pull people towards an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And how they go about that information is in 5e not always super structured.
Yeah, for sure.
And so this is a really great vehicle for the mechanism around flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as long as you're very clear about how you can get information at the beginning, be like, I'm going to eliminate some free will so that the game works well.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about several mechanics that ultimately culminate in basically multipliers when you come to your assassination. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Of like sneaking up on somebody and killing them and striking that death blow. Basically, you'll have, I think I have 5 or 6 things that's like if you max out your stats in those, you're able to use all of those numbers as a multiplier for your final attack roll.
Oh, cool. So it's like sneak attack plus.
Right. Yeah. Sneak attack plus, and it's all based on your research of that final assassination.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So basically, I put, this is kitschy. I just want to say it on the air here. Small skills to big kills.
There we go.
That's how we're flowing through this.
Yeah.
So, each skill in my mind is like, if you're running an XP game, is like 100 XP per level, and then there's 5 levels to master all of these skills that would be on top of what your characters are normally leveling up through.
Yeah.
But these would reset every new city that they went into.
Oh, okay.
So it's like you have however many city sections you want to break it up in, but Assassin's Creed is like you wander into a city and you hang out in the low level areas until you build your way up to the bigger ones, and then you eventually go to where your assassination is.
Yeah.
And so you want to honor that in a way, and it's like, okay, you're in the level 1 area, you're in the level 2 area. It all has to be very structured for the players to see. So climbing is also a big thing in these games. So I wanted to include climbing prowess as a skill. That would be my first skill. And that would be my way of keeping players out of the final boss areas, instead of being like, yeah, you can't fucking go over there, because that's very restrictive. I don't want to be that restrictive, but I would say like, okay, the tiles on the side of this building are more advanced than you're able to climb right now.
Okay,
until we level that up, then we can't go up there. So I want climbing to be more an exploration function and a way to like gain treasure and things like that. And the big dives that are a big part of Assassin's Creed. It's like you synchronize and then you dive off. So those will be part of it for sure. Like you see a high point, I want to climb that. Okay, we'll do like minimal rolls. And if it's within your level to climb, then I'm just going to describe the climb and we'll get up there. Right?
Yeah, I like that.
And then the synchronization is like, I would literally have my players draw a map of the city. Like I'll have one and I'll describe it to people, or I'll show them part of it, and then they'll scratch out their version. But in addition to that, when they synchronize, there's 2 mysteries going on, one in the present and one in the past. So as they make their dive towards the pile of hay, is what is in the game, then they would get a clue about their current mystery. So it's like, that's how they would unravel what's going on in present times.
Gotcha.
To me. So it's like, I want to make sure that there's a lot of rewards based on climbing, because it's going to get very repetitive and very boring as a TTRPG. To be like, I see that building and I climb up. Okay. Like you have to have a really heavy reward system to keep people doing that. So anyway, that's climbing. And every time they participate in it, there's some XP level that, I'll leave to you guys to break down if you want. And then plan strength was another one. So in the game, it basically tells you what percentage you have of being successful in your final mission based on how much research you've done, how much you've interacted with people in the city and learned about where your target's going to be and all this stuff. So I would like that, again, to be very structured if you're trying to recreate the game and say, okay, 60% of what's going to go on that day. So there may be still 40% worth of surprises on top of normal, like you're going to affect the situation and things are going to change. Right. So if you just super stealth, got in, got out, you would know 60% of what was going to happen, right? Or 100% if you did all of the side quests, right?
But even then, I feel like you could still add some like small percentage of like something that's still going to be different.
Yeah. I mean, the percentage I think would fall under the context of knowable information.
Okay.
Right. So things that are known to the public or whoever you sort of kidnapped and gleaned information from. If it's not something that was known by that person, then 100% of the information that was in the side quests. And then you could leave some available for that. But that way they were really invested on sort of getting that 100% and saying like, I want to know as much as I can, because that gets them more invested in your world and experiencing as much of it as possible, which makes that last kill so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
In the later games, when they got rid of it, I was like, even on the higher levels, I was like, okay, the assassination target's over there. I'm just going to run over and stab them.
Yeah.
And it would work out because, the block mechanic in that game was so broken for a while.
Crazy.
And then the next skill, so that's the first two. Social integration would be number 3. And that's just another way to chart how they're talking to people in town and learning things about their assassination target. And they have a cool mechanic in later games where it's like you can hire people to assist you in some way.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like, how do you know where those people are if you don't talk to them, right? So it's you know, setting up allies and things like that. That's where that social integration would come. And to me, it could be super easy. You don't have to attach XP to it. You could just be like, okay, you found a guild that you can hire. You've moved to level 2. You've you've set up an escape plan through the help of, you know, hiding in somebody's attic or something. You've moved to level 3. You know, making it very simple. That's social integration. And then mapping. Like I said, I would have people actually map out their plan of attack, like actually map out the city from climbing to rooftops and getting an idea of what part of town they're in, and then actually mapping out where people think the artifacts that they're sent to look for are, and then actually mapping out what route their assassination target normally takes or will take on the day. And that way, everybody has a very clear idea of where they're going to go and a very clear picture of what's happening.
And I feel like something that would help for this is looking at either other city maps that people have done. I think on Reddit, there's a whole thread of people who have their city maps, their world maps, and maps that they share. I know I have Incarnate. I've made my own maps on there. But some of the other maps I've seen, I'm like, oh my gosh, those are so like gorgeous and beautiful. You could absolutely have one of those maps and then just describe it to them and at least show me like, this is the general vibe of the map that you guys are looking at. All right, now you have to like, I'm not going to give it to you, or maybe you do give it to them as they look and see it, but they still have to like track where they're going to be going, you know?
Yeah, or even like they have a map of the area, but it doesn't have titles on it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it has no waypoints, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good idea too, because then that eliminates them having to draw their own map or feel like they're getting taken advantage of by having to draw and then everybody making fun of their crappy drawings. That's kind of inevitable, right?
Yeah, for sure. Or like the sizing isn't as like what you think it is, and you're like, no, actually that's supposed to be a little bit smaller. No, that one's supposed to be a little bit.
Yeah. So
a little bit more to the right.
Getting everybody on the same page, I like that better. Giving out a map and saying this is commonplace. This is what you've been given to start your mission. And they know a couple of key points, but they don't know the lay of the land, so to speak.
So what that's I did, cool. I mean, just that's as far
cool.
as mapping goes, what I did for my players for Daggerheart, I gave them both the world map and the link to my Incarnate map, and then I gave them a city map, and I put the titles of some of the places there, but I gave no description, and so then the players came in and were asking, what's this? So I think that is that cool helps to have some of them labeled, and then there are going to be some places that obviously aren't labeled. Those aren't the only locations in town.
Yeah, and if you wanted to role play it, then you could just have them do a social interaction when they come into town, and then kind of get the lay of the land from people, and say, "Well, hey, can you point me a couple places in town? Maybe I should or shouldn't go." And then you can point it out, and then they have that same information.
For sure.
Homebrewing, anything you want to do.
Absolutely.
The next one is understanding of defenses. So I feel like every target, every lower level target, whatever you do in this city, in terms of killing people, everybody has different levels of defenses. And if you don't, say you learn everything there is to know about the route that somebody's going to take, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to kill him now. Okay, but if you don't have any understanding of what their defenses are and who they're rolling with, then that's going to lower your ability to kill them. In my mind, so like that lowers the final multiplier. So that one, good enough. And my thought there is like you could find the guards and spar with them and see what their level is, or like wander into training or whatever. However you want to role play that, you can have some fun moments getting to know the guards you're about to murder.
So
in terrible ways.
I had in the last game there was a group that was going to fight in this kind of Coliseum event, and there was one guy who was his character has ventured around and has seen a lot of stuff, and he's like, can I like just observe this group and give them like some type of like these are their typical weaknesses as Dragonborn. They typically don't do this in this world, or their weak spots are this here on the armor. And I was like, we're not going to roll on that, but what I'll give you is an additional bonus roll. The players that are going into this next set of combat, you can add a d6 either to your attack roll or your damage roll. Just because it's like you've been spending time here all day looking at them, so you would know these things with your background and stuff like that. It is something that you would be able to share there with them, and I think that definitely you could definitely do something along those lines where you're observing them at the sparring and like, okay, I don't necessarily need to fight them, but I just need to observe them. You could pay one of your social things could be paying someone else to attack the guards or cause some type of disruption to see like, okay, this is how they're going to respond to that.
Nice. I like that too.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea. I like I like the bonus die. When as a player, I like the bonus die.
Yeah.
I think that's really fun. It's hard to keep track of when there's a lot, but when there's just like a subtle mechanic here or there, it's really fun.
Yeah, and it was a one-time use. So it was like this is gonna be like this is your powerful blow. It's not you're gonna have an extra die every time you roll against it, but for this moment, you have an extra die, and y'all can use it whenever you want to. And again, I like it can be to hit or to the damage.
Nice. The flow skill is the final one of these sort of city mastery skills that and this is a fairly complicated mechanic, but if you're running an entire game based on this one thing, then I feel like it's good to have rules around it. But the final skill I had laid out was the flow skill. So in a lot of games that came out at that time, you could time sped up or slow down.
Yeah.
And so I basically just lump that all together in the flow skill. So for me, it's like every time you want to drop into the flow state, it'd almost be the same as rages or whatever. Like you have two times to do that per day.
Yeah.
And if you drop in, then you have, say, a D4 when you're lower level, D6 on up.
Yeah.
And whatever that number is, when you drop into flow state, that is your bonus to all of your of your rolls while you're in that state.
That's cool. Yeah.
So if you roll max, then it's like, well, I got a +4 to everything. Which I think, basically when you drop into the assassination mode, then you want your rolls to be minimum anyway, but you want them to be 99% positive.
Yeah, for sure.
If they've done all the work, let's say they've done all the side quests and they don't get impatient or bored, then yeah, you want them to have that reward and for it to feel really easy and simple.
Yeah, for sure.
And then all of those would sum up into the multiplier when you finally arrive at your assassination target and you've done all these rolls. You get there, you do that final blow, you roll the damage, and then you multiply it by the same number of like, I'm at level 5 climbing, I'm at level 4 plant strength. Like you add all those together and you multiply your final number by that.
Dang.
So it's like, even if it's a really high level character, then you could still get them bloodied.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you rolled good times all of that, like you're looking at a pretty high roll there.
Yeah. And that's where you have to kind of even it out, or, based on, if you don't want them to kill them in one strike, then you got to kind of work out that math. But anyway.
But I mean, the whole point is the assassination thing. So it's like if they do everything and they roll medium damage, it should be pretty damn close to knocking them out.
Yeah.
Especially like, let's just say there's 6 of them, and let's say the skill tree has up to 4, and you max out all of it. That's a times 24 multiplier. You roll 10 points of damage. That's 240 damage.
Yeah.
And that's,
yeah, but that's
crazy.
Right. But
I mean, it's specifically on this target.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't the mechanics will help you in other areas, but it's specifically for this target where it's like, these are the, level 15 or higher characters in these cities.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're going to be high HP.
Yeah.
Is my thought there. Anyway, it doesn't really matter if they're dead at the end, right? And it feels good to roll high numbers, I feel like, too.
Sure
so
does.
it's like, fuck yeah, let's get it. 240.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. And that's pretty much it. I feel like it's all about momentum to sum it up. That Assassin's Creed is all about that giving of information and that leveling up, but quickly, so that you can get to know the area, get to know the target, get to know the culture, feel like you're immersed in the city, see what that person is doing to hurt the city, and then you take them out.
Yeah.
And you get your money and you get the fuck out.
Yeah. I think that's a fun little kind of like skill tree that I feel like you would almost have to like make your own skill tree and per city, and then have those, and then have maybe like additional like skills or bonuses and things that you can use. But I think it can still be a very interesting dynamic to have a group of assassins come in and, attempting to knock out, 1 to 4 targets and seeing what happens. Yeah, that seems fun.
Nice. You had a really cool mechanic last time we played,
Mm-hmm.
that you called the anime show thing. So you have a different title for it here, but as anime power up. But it was really super fun as a player. So
I'm glad.
Can you share some of that?
Yeah,
that's a good homebrew mechanic.
For sure. And I think we're running tight on time. I know I had something else here. Before we get to that, I had said cool magic system, just combining spells and trying to figure something out. I think that's an interesting dynamic and fun for spellcaster to try and make new spells, but I don't really have much more to add to it. That's going to be very, very much either on the player or on the DM. I think it would be more tough for a DM to come up with stuff, not because it's hard for us to, but because we could think of so many different things to do it. But I think it would be more on the player to, like, at least for the DM, to give that opportunity to be like, how do you want to mix this spell here with something else? Or if you want to try and create your own spell, like, you have the freedom to try and do that.
And the key point here is balance. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure you're balancing whatever they come up with, but it is definitely like a higher level thing. Like, you think Avatar Last Airbender, another one we mention a lot.
Yeah.
That he's learning different types of bending as he levels up. And so how is he mixing those skills?
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, like you said, it's probably a higher level stuff that you're putting together. I know for Molly, she knows the system really well, so I think what she did was kind of like, she knows to stay inside the box. But I think when we were first playing, and like you and Grace didn't necessarily know all the rules and all the things, y'all pushed the system. I was like, sure, yeah, try it. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And she was like, they get to do cool stuff, and sometimes I'm just like sticking with what I'm doing. Is like, well, try and think outside the box. I try and push the system. She's like, but I know the system. So I think that is something that, as a DM, it's giving the permission for the players to try their best to break the system, because I think it's rule of cool to yes and some of those things.
Rule of cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And then, speaking of breaking systems, we're going into our anime power up system. So this is like the moment where, in the anime, they're trying to push past their limits, and trying to do something that they haven't necessarily done before. I think of, these are the moments when Goku's turning into Super Saiyan. These are the moments when in Demon Slayer, Tanjiro pushes past his limits and he kind of goes full berserk mode and gets his like breathing technique just right to fight one of the demons. And then right before the killing blow, he ends up getting out of that state, but at least he was already hurt up to a point and then was able to push past his limit. So that's really like this anime power up, is pushing past the limit, and seeing these stories that we grow attached to and love so much. And we like seeing people leveling up in our anime or in our TV shows or whatever. So how I decided to use it was to use a pool of something that we don't necessarily use so much, because D&D has turned more into a story-based RPG versus the dungeon crawliness of it, where you have to use your hit dice to heal up. I think you're supposed to be able to take like 3 short rests per adventuring day, and that's how your ability is supposed to stretch across that. So I think as the system moves to this more story-based focus, how can we use some of the abilities and the pools of resources that we don't really use much? So we're using our hit dice here, and I know I've talked about it a little bit, but this is my full system here, and using your hit dice to increase some of those abilities. And the cost of using your hit dice, for what I have right now, is once you reach below 1/3, then once you've used 1/3 of your hit dice, you lose a death save. Once you've used 2/3 of your hit dice, you lose 2 death saves. And if you've used under 1/3 of, or you have less than 1/3 of your hit dice left, you have no hit dice left.
You drop your dead
saves. Yeah, exactly. So it gets very spicy very quick, you know. So once you're starting to use your hit dice, and the cost for them is typically at minimum 2 hit dice. So this isn't something you're going to be doing at level 1. This isn't something you're going to be doing at level 2, but you have the option to do it. But if you do it, it's going to be real bad. This is going to be more like a level 4, 5, 6 type of thing. And then I just introduced this to y'all, and y'all are level 14, 15, I believe, something like that.
So we got a pretty good pool.
Yeah, you'll have a solid pool of hit dice. So the way that I have it set up is movement costs 2 hit dice to do an additional sprint or use what your movement speed is. Use a dash action. So I think that to me was when you're moving, and I hate like you've used all your movement. It's a super critical moment. I like to now ask my players like, what are you willing to cost? Like, what is this going to cost for you to get that extra movement? And I think hit dice is where it landed to just move a little bit further. I hate when I'm moving and I'm like, I'm literally 1 square away from him. I'm 5 feet away or 10 feet away, and I know I can finish the fight right here. What can I do to push myself for the story to make it a better story and really cost that resource and move my 2 hit dice up? So that's where that thought came from. And 2 hit dice, I feel like, is a pretty good sacrifice for that at higher levels. It's not necessarily the biggest sacrifice, but if you're going to use some of these extra things that do stack currently in this system that I'm homebrewing, then it does start to get spicy real quick. The next one I have is extra attack. So if you wanted to make an extra attack, that would cost another 2 hit dice. Because again, there's those moments. It happens so much in our campaign where someone gets them down to 1 or 3 or 4 hit points. Like we're single digits, and it's like to me it feels like it would be an epic story moment right here for you to finish them off. Like it would make sense. The story has brought it to this point where whichever character it is trying to get this finishing blow, but they just can't. And now it's now it's a bunch of other people's turn over here, or it's someone else's turn that's not necessarily super close, and it's not going to be able to finish the fight anyways. But it's like, but the story would have made sense here for that to happen. And I know people are going to say, well, the dice tell a story. Yeah, it does, but sometimes the dice can miss the point.
And the dungeon master just interceding and saying, well, I'll say that you killed him here is very disappointing too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you can tell like, oh, there's like 1 or 2 hit points. You're like, man, you're
I didn't
so
do it.
close. Yeah. And so like that cost of two hit dice, you can make 1 extra attack. And then if you miss on that attack, it's like you're pushing past your limit. I'm going to use another 2 hit dice. I'm going to make another attack. I'm going to make another attack. Like I'm
like
going to attack until I hit them, whatever the cost is. And the cost could potentially be my death. I think that is also a very, very solid story point and story moment that can happen. And then because extra attack cost 2 hit dice, they can't leave the spellcasters out, right? I feel like martial characters, it's using their physical will. I think for spellcasters, using their hit dice is more of like their mana that they have for their spell casting. So they're dipping into their actual life force now that they can't use another spell. And in the same vein, like they want to finish their character off or finish this enemy off, or just be able to cast another spell to protect the people or heal their allies. And this is a little nuanced or a little bit different than the other two, where it's not just for 1 it costs this. If you're going to cast an additional spell in D&D, you can only cast 1 spell that's an action, and then you can cast a cantrip bonus action spell. But I play where some people can use another action to do a spell of 2nd level or lower. I took that from Critical Role Season 1 because they changed it over from Pathfinder. But then it was like, if you want to cast like another powerful spell, that's going to cost at minimum 2 hit dice. So even if you're, and I'm changing that homebrew rule that I said before. So even now, if I'm going to cast a 1st level spell, it's going to cost me 2 hit dice. But if I want to cast like a 7th level spell, that's going to cost me 7 hit dice. It's going to be the level of the spell with a minimum of 2. So then if they cast, Guiding Bolt and they hit, and now they want to use another roll to hit with advantage spell that's maybe a little bit higher, they can sacrifice a huge chunk, cast a 9th level Guiding Bolt to hopefully finish this one. They have advantage on it. They already have a pretty high plus to hit. I think that is another cool pulling of the life force from them. And I really enjoy those because it creates a good story, and it creates a little bit more, like we talked about for the barbarian, a little bit more utility for our players to use, to give them more stuff that they can do. And then lastly, this is actually, I'm just letting people know, this is a rule in the DM's guide that is an optional rule. It's a healing surge. And so you can use half your hit dice to heal. You don't need health potions as long as your DM is cool with it. That is an ability. It's an optional rule that you can use half your hit dice to heal once per day. And that is called a healing surge. I really like that because I think that also pushes people to that second win, but it's more than just a second win. You know, the second win for fighters is just 1d10. You're like, cool. I'm a 15th level fighter and I got 10 hit points, and we know this dude does 50 points of damage, so it doesn't really matter too much to me. But like half your hit dice, okay, now I'm a 10th level fighter and I could potentially get, you know, up to 60 hit points of back if I rolled full, which would be crazy. But anyway,
Nice, yeah.
you know, so those are kind of the things that those are my anime power-ups. I think there's definitely more to use here. I think the barbarian stuff that we talked about at the beginning of the episode kind of came from this, and how I liked it and how I want to rework some of the stuff. I think druids, so I'm currently playtesting Daggerheart, and how they do druids in there is very cool because it uses stress to move in and out of your druid form. And
Interesting.
yeah, and it is typically at will, or at least that's how we're playing it at this point, and how I am interpreting the rules. So I think, like, as a druid, the only druid in D&D is I think the moon druid can turn into an animal as a bonus action. But what if you give them the ability to turn into other animals, but it sacrifices their life force again? You know, it takes 2 hit dice to change into whatever animal. I haven't workshopped that one out as well, but I think there's definitely, like, per class, how can you utilize some of these resources that we don't use because it's not in our game as much. We can use a resource that they have without creating a whole nother system or a whole nother mechanic. Instead of like adding stress to the game, there's like Daggerheart has stress, and then Call of Cthulhu has stress too. So instead of adding that stress mechanic, how maybe stress is interpreted or viewed as the hit dice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. We have been aiming for 100 subscribers on YouTube.
Yes.
It's one of our newer platforms, so don't judge us too harshly. But if we hit that, and you guys like this video, Homebrew Workshop, then we can do some homebrew rules for Halo, as this is year for Halo. We can round out, whenever we hit that mark, then we can start working on that video, just as a thank you to you guys who like the workshop stuff. So anybody hearing this, if you hype up this video and we hit 100 subscribers, then we can give you some homebrew rules for Halo. So there you go. There you go. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want more homebrew, definitely shout us out for like the things you want us to homebrew.
And Michael is working on putting stats up on the Patreon, right?
Yes,
For just
slowly but surely. But
slowly
yes.
but surely, yes. A lot of the things that we talk about, he's already has notes on all over the place. So we're just getting that in a more organized place, and then throwing that on the Patreon. So if you like that kind of content, come through. We got you. Thank you for joining us, creative thinkers all across the globe. Take care. Bye-bye. Peace.
Peace. Thank you for watching the Creative Thinker podcast. We put a lot of love and attention into every show, and with that comes a lot of time and money.
You can help us out through the support links in the description. You can sponsor an episode. You can subscribe to our Patreon. And as always, you can follow, like, subscribe, and share all of our channels.
We are eternally grateful for your support as we continue to bring you more episodes of the Creative Thinker podcast.
Creative thinkers all over the globe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.